On to Leslie. So really excited to welcome Leslie for this. She is very much qualified to talk about immersive sound. So just a few points. She just mentioned to us that she met Liz Dobson from the Yorkshire Sound and Women's Network when she was writing the book Women in Audio.
Yep.
Which some of you have probably read. I think I'm going to read it now after after reading it, all this interesting stuff about Leslie. I'm going to get a copy. So yeah, she's a re-recording mixer, which is a dubbing mixer, and sound editor. And she owns Mix Messiah Productions, which specializes in 5.1 surround mixing. So I'm sure we're going to hear more about surround mixing during the presentation. She's part of the AES Presents series. She's been published by Focal Press, and she's a voting member of the Recording Academy. That's part of the Grammys, and she's in the Producers and Engineers wing. So lots of exciting things there. And yeah, in the past, she's worked at the University of Colorado, Denver as Associate Professor of Recording Arts and also Chair of the Department of Music and Entertainment Industry Studies, and lots more stuff, lots more research that she's done in audio for planetariums and multi-channel audio, Blu-ray, and been published in lots of interesting places, which I'm not going to list right now because want to get into the presentation. So yeah, thanks for joining us so much, Leslie, and thanks to Yorkshire Sound Women's Network for organising all of this. Let's get going.
Thank you very much. I just want to say, thank you to Yorkshire Sound Women's Network. You guys are doing amazing work. Please keep it up. I know that I've been doing a lot of work focused on diversity and inclusion, and it can be tiring. So just know that you have an ally out here. I know what the struggle is like, and I'm just so grateful. We were talking about gratitude earlier, and so I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for everybody making time out of their afternoon to join me talking about immersive audio. So yes, just like Emily said, I've been doing stuff for a while. I've been doing audio since 1987 is when I started my audio tech degree, and I've been doing audio ever since then. And it has been a very rewarding career. And one of the things that has sort of driven my past, or driven my present, driven my career course is this discovery of immersive sound, specifically 5.1 sound. And the first time, well, I do have a keynote presentation, which I can't wait to share with you, but I sort of, I feel like I need to do this little preamble just to tell you why I got into it. So back in the 80s, we had videotapes, and there was this, if you're around in the 90s or in late 80s, you might remember that you could get a hi-fi video. And the hi-fi video wasn't recorded on the linear part of the tape. It was recorded as part of the video signal, like frequency modulated within, and buried in there. And I was like, oh, wow, this is super fancy technology. So I got a hi-fi VCR and a Dolby Pro Logic stereo decoder, the state of the art in, that year, 1991, 2, 3, whatever it was. And so, I wanted to have sound up there and sound behind here and be immersed in the sound. And it was okay. I mean, no, it wasn't CD quality, and we had CDs at the time, but nobody really cared about, sound being on videotape. But other than the fact that I listened to movies on the VCR at home, I wasn't really into surround sound until about 2003. And then I heard for the first time, we were talking earlier about Genelec speakers and a proper studio. And for the first time I heard, CD quality. This is right around when Blu-rays, super audio CDs, and DVD audio came out. And it was amazing. I mean, it was CD quality. It wasn't encoded on the hi-fi tracks of the videotape. It was discrete 5.1, and it was amazing. And I was hooked. And yeah, from there, I got into other formats like Planetariums. And we had, huge planetarium with a domed ceiling, and they had 16 loudspeakers up there. And, we were watching the constellations and flying through the galaxies, all in surround sound. And so that was pretty amazing. So from an academic standpoint, I've been doing these things. And fast forward to the present moment, I'm doing a PhD, and I'm calling it immersive and inclusive. And the reason I'm doing this is because I haven't noticed a lot of women at these academic conferences or at these or even trade conferences. There are some, and you might know some, and you might be someone who's working in immersive audio, but for the most part, we're still getting lectures on head related transfer functions from the old boys club. And I think that's a shame, and I'd like to change that, and I'd like to introduce you to this topic so that we can all get in here and change things. So without further ado, and of course, if we were meeting in person, I would love to bring, like, I have tons and scores and scads of stuff to play, but I have found over the last year that trying to play immersive sound over Zoom, it's not where we want it to be yet. So please forgive me for giving kind of a dry lecture, but will it be? I think it'll actually be pretty cool and exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to start with my keynote. And at the beginning of our session today, organizers Emily and company discovered something crazy. If you don't have an application active, like if it's hiding, it won't show up on your screen share. So word to the wise, don't hide things behind Zoom, because you won't be able to find them. So thumbs up, everybody can see this. Excellent. Okay, so here we are. This is immersive and inclusive, current participation and barriers to entry. So this is kind of a two-parter. So I'll first talk about what immersive audio and sound are. We'll look at how we can get in there, and then I'll get into a little bit more meat and potatoes. Sorry, America, about how that works. So here we go. Let's see. So what is immersive sound? Here's a picture I took some time ago. It was 2011, maybe, and we went to the Grand Canyon. It's an amazing place, the Grand Canyon. Miles and miles of steep cliffs and silly people doing stunts. I'm afraid not only for my own life. If you can tell where I'm standing, I'm probably not a very safe place. And all these people posing for cameras and stuff. It's like one false move and you're going over the edge. But that's part of the appeal of this picture, and part of the appeal of taking this picture is we're awestruck by the notion of space, right? And the Grand Canyon is this awe-inspiring big space that a picture can't capture. But from the vantage point of this picture, it's definitely what I'm hearing at that moment in time when I'm taking the picture is not stereo audio, right? There's a woman and her friends are taking pictures above me. So I'm below the person and the woman is up and to the right of me. There is sound coming from below me, way below me, down in the canyon. I know sometimes we talk about immersive audio and you see people have speakers on the floor. And a lot of people say, you never hear stuff coming from the floor. What's down there? Footsteps. I'm like, in the Grand Canyon, you do. There's lots of stuff down there. It's a canyon. So there's stuff, way in front and way behind and up in the sky, birds flying by, and you can see the streaks of the plane tail. I don't know what you call it, vapor trail or whatever. And so that is definitely an immersive space. And that is how You know, if you go to the Grand Canyon, you experience immersive sound. You don't have to go to the Grand Canyon. You know, you can go and stand on London Bridge and you'll hear immersive sound. Wait, London Bridge is falling down. Pick another bridge. You know, you can listen to sound from just about anywhere, and it's coming from all around you. And so when we talk about sound all around, we hear sound from above, below, behind, and in front of us. In nature, there are birds and squirrels way up in the leaves and branches. There are, you know, squirrels and frogs and you know, little critters at our feet. And we're especially keen to be sensitive to things coming behind us, because if you're in the forest and something's coming up from behind you, you don't want it to have you for lunch. So it's something that we are sensitive to and that we rely on in our everyday lives. So let's replace the word sound with the word audio. All of a sudden we have speakers in the picture, because, you know, what is audio except for sound made electronic? So in this picture, you see 4 speakers hanging from the ceiling. You see some speakers around the sides. If I had turned my body to the right, you would have seen that there are speakers behind the people, and there's a subwoofer on the floor. And so this was at a convention where they were talking about Dolby Atmos. So immersive audio, and here's another little exhibit at a convention where a guy is playing with Avid S6 and the Dolby Atmos panner, which you can see over there. And so what we're doing with immersive audio is we're trying to create sound from all directions. Now, believe it or not, we try to do this with 2 loudspeakers. And if you've ever heard the phrase half live, half dead, what that phrase refers to is an ideal acoustic treatment for a stereo studio. And the reason why you want half dead is so that the sound is absorbed, but you also want half live so that the sound bounces around a little bit and envelops you. So even with just 2 speakers, people have been trying to immerse you, right, with sound. You can do immersive sound with a pair of headphones, like we're all wearing, or some of us are wearing, which is called binaural, and we'll get into that a little bit. And then there's these speaker configurations, 5.1, which is 3 in the front, 2 in the back, and a subwoofer. 714, which is 7 around you, a subwoofer, and 4 in the ceiling. And then 22.2, which I'll show you a picture of, which is speakers just all over the place. Just don't even worry about how they're configured. They're just all over the place. And then wave field synthesis. So let's take a look at what these look like. This is 22.2 room at the University of Surrey. I'm not even going to try to, I don't remember how the speakers are configured. Maybe there's 5 on the floor and 8 in a ring above and 8 above. Does that get us to 22? I don't know. And then 2 subwoofers. And then wave field synthesis is actually the attempt to get sound to appear like it's coming next to you. So if you think about it, if you're surrounded by speakers, the sound is always on the outside of the sphere, like the surface of a sphere. That's where the speakers are. And you can't get the illusion of something, you know, talking to you right here in your face. But wave field synthesis tries to do that. I've never personally experienced it, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it sound like a sound is, you know, a foot in front of you or 3 feet to the right of you. It's pretty cool technology. I haven't been lucky enough to experience that though. And then there's a picture of me being very stern, giving some very stern words to the Neumann KM100, or is it KU100 dummy head, which is meant to simulate the human ear and use microphones to create a very specific stereo image, which we'll talk about. And then here's a crazy looking speaker. It's not a dodecahedron, but it's some sort of polyhedron, and it has speaker drivers all over its surfaces. And the principle here is that speaker is going to throw sound across the room. It's going to bounce off of a wall and then come back to you. And it sounds like sound is coming from all around you. It's this funky speaker. And now this one I've actually heard in Germany at the Klingtgut Symposium, which happens in Hamburg every year that's not a pandemic year. And yeah, it's crazy. I didn't expect to have the illusion of sound coming from all around from this crazy looking thing, but it does. It's like bouncing sound from off of all of these surfaces, and it's kind of like used for sound art installations. And here are some of the companies that are creating immersive sound. Not all of them, just some of them. Dolby Atmos is probably one you've heard the most, but DTS:X, Auro 3D. These are all competing cinema and video game and home surround formats. And then in the bottom center, we've got Wise, which is something you can use to do video game programming, sound programming for video games. On the bottom right is a crazy little microphone called Zilia, which works with the principles of Ambisonics, which is cool technology that was invented in the 70s, believe it or not. And then up and to the right, you see the Vive, and that is a video game platform where you can get the illusion of being in a space, exploring worlds and getting oral cues that something is behind you or in front of you, and then you turn your head to look, and then you go over and you kill the dragon or whatever the game is that you're playing. But what about representation? I'm really concerned about this, and I'll tell you, in the last decade, in the last century, there's been a reckoning. Now, it seems for some reason that it's just this recent thing where women are fighting for equal rights, equal pay, basic human dignity. But this has been going on for much longer. I mean, even before the 1970s, of course, we had the suffragette movement, et cetera. But in terms of audio and audio technology, we had the first all-female album in the USA. And I mean, when I say all-female, I mean written by, engineered by, produced by, sold by, made a profit. And that was a feminist album in the 70s. And so that was a unique thing. And I think some people, knowing the women's movements and the music movements that are happening now, are kind of surprised to know that, yes, there was a first, and it was, a long time ago. I don't know what the first one was in the UK. I'm sorry. I do need to do more research. In 1989, a woman named June Millington founded the Institute for Musical Arts. Now, when I tell you the name of the band June Millington started, if I was in America, nobody would giggle. But the name of June Millington's band was Fanny, and they were the first act signed to a major label. But she went on to do this advocacy by creating a all-female music school, which focused on music business and focused on music recording and focused on songwriting and performing. And it still operates today. In 2004, we had the Women's Audio Mission, and then Sound Girls. And then, of course, you guys know that Liz Dobson has wrote about over 70 feminist sound collectives. So there's definitely some things to talk about. Also with the racial justice in the last century, since, before any of us were born. But what's interesting is that now Audio Engineering Society, the Association of Motion Picture Sound, which is here in the UK, the Recording Academy, all these companies are saying out loud, we condemn racism, we condemn structural racism. These are audio organizations. Audio, what does audio have to do with racial justice? What does audio have to do with any kind of justice? But people are starting to take a stand. So let's look at some more numbers. This is indirectly related to immersive audio. And again, my goal is to try and use this data to show that by extension, there seems to be a problem getting women and underrepresented groups into immersive sound. So Stacy Smith is often quoted in her inclusion in the recording studio ? Study. And she says women are missing in the music industry. Of the 800 charting Billboard songs over between 2012 and 2019, only 21.7% were women, 12 were artists who were women, 12.3% were songwriters, only 2.1 are producers. So I mean, the people who are in the studio pushing the button, she didn't say producer and engineer, she just said producer. Of that 2.1%, 4 were women of color. 4 of 800 songs. It's crazy. And then let's talk about game sound, for example. Now, here's a comparison between the United States, United Kingdom, and Europe, where we see the United Kingdom is doing a little bit better than the United States in terms of female representation. Interestingly, and I don't know if they rounded these numbers down, but we had 0% identifying as non-binary or non-gender conforming. So that's some interesting data. Who is making the video games? Who's programming the sound for video games? The Audio Engineering Society, there's a great big blue line that represents people of white or Caucasian descent, and another great big blue line showing, you know, all the men who are in the Audio Engineering Society. Less than 10% are women there. And just in terms of those who identify as Black or African American, I identify as both Black, African American, either one works for me. There's just tiny, I think it's like less than 5%. Interesting. So if we're talking about immersive audio and we're talking about immersive sound and who's creating the sound, I think it's interesting to suppose who owns the art form, you know, and whose voices are being heard, don't you? I think so too. Oh, yes. And yes, I want to talk about the binaural. We'll talk about the binaural measurements in a minute. I'm just glancing over to the Q&A too. So then we look at, let's just choose the AES. You know, I'm very active with the AES, but Kat Young, where's Kat? Is Kat at Huddersfield, Kat Young, or York? I think she's at University of York. But she did a study looking at how many women were presenting at AES conferences. Note that none of the numbers are above 25%. So of women presenting at conferences, the average is probably around 10% or less. So if we look at who's talking about immersive audio, for 4 years, we didn't have any representation at academic conferences, at the AES conference. I wasn't looking at IEEE, I wasn't looking at IPS. You know, I was lucky enough to find Kat's study, and this is what the numbers show us. So that's pretty bleak outlook. I'm happy to say that it is getting better. We, you know, went from 0 to 11% in 3 years. And I'm happy to say that this year's convention is way more well represented. Spoiler alert, you know, I happen to be on the organizing committee as one of the diversity and inclusive consultants, you know, trying to change that. And this year we're looking at gender parity, I think. The final results aren't in, but we're really happy about that. Let's keep going. There's more data to share. Here's a study by Amandine Pross. She's from the University of Lethbridge in Canada, Alberta, Canada. Look at this. Women who work in the recording studio experience more microaggressions than those who work in STEM academia. I mean, that there is a jaw-dropping anecdote. It's based on the study. You know, she's got some pretty hard data showing this. And what's disheartening, of course, is that there are so few women working in STEM, right? And so women who work in the recording studio have worse experience. Oh my gosh, who would ever want to go into a recording studio? And that's why it's so important to have these safe spaces where we can work and experiment and be supported. So especially if you're working with novel technology, right? Like immersive audio. And then this one I want each of you to take and put in your pocket next time you come across a social media post saying, well, women just aren't interested in audio. Let's consider that Georgina Bourne and her colleagues in their study Music, Technology, Gender, and Class discovered that between the ages of 5, 6 to 16, 40% are girls choosing music technology as their instrument. After age 16, the number goes down to 25. Among music technology A-level entries, it's 18. And finally, at university, enrollment on music technology is 10%. So who says we're not interested? You know, we just have to go back a slide to maybe get a clue about what's happening here. And that's not to say that any of us are, you know, experiencing microaggressions or that, you know, we're daunted by that, you know, but maybe we are, and maybe it's something we need to look at and talk about. And then here's one that says producers of color haven't been given opportunities to have access to resources like Pro Tools. So there was an article by Michael McDowell who said, Pro Tools proficiency might be keeping us from diversifying audio. So do you have to know Pro Tools? It's definitely recommended if you're going to get into immersive audio and Dolby Atmos, like all of these tools that are based on really deep digital audio workstations. You know, there are barriers to entry where maybe students of color cannot afford to go to school, or, you know, can't afford to get to the next master's level where we're in the surround studio. Maybe we can get the 4-year degree, but it's the master's level where you really start getting into the surround stuff. So that's a barrier. How much does it cost to get into immersive audio? Hey, Pro Tools is free. I love it when people say Pro Tools is free. No, it ain't. You need an iLok. An iLok costs 45 pounds. You got to have an iLok, you know, right? Or if you want to listen to immersive audio, binaural audio with the best headphones, everybody says the open back headphones are the best. Hey, they cost 170 pounds. Let's keep going. If you wanted to go to the AES's Audio for Virtual and Augmented Reality, AVAR conference, this is what it cost me to update my computer with the right graphics card, get a VR headset, and pay to register for the conference. 975 pounds. That's crazy. You know, how are we welcoming people to this field when it costs almost 1,000 pounds to have fun in it and meet other people in these virtual spaces? 30,000 pounds, the cost of a 3-year music tech degree. All of a sudden, you know, it's not attractive, you know, to be DIY about this stuff. It's like, you know, the networks and the technology are in these bigger institutions that are really expensive. And then once you cross that milestone and you say, okay, I'm going to be an immersive content producer. I'm going to be like Leslie Gaston-Bird, and I'm going to get a studio and I'm going to outfit it. I'm sitting here today wondering how the heck I'm going to get 48,000 to put Dolby Atmos in here and get certified. You don't have to be certified to do Dolby Atmos, but if you want a client base that trusts you, they're asking you to spend a crap ton of money on speakers and hardware and the renderers and la la la. So this is not, there are definitely some economic barriers. So representation. Let's talk about some of the people who are working in this field. And I want to talk briefly about something we call pull. And pull is something that we are all benefiting from right now. Everybody sitting in this conference watching me is benefiting from the networking opportunity and mentorship opportunity that the Yorkshire Sound Women's Network has afforded to us to be together. So this is an example of pulling people up. And notice who's in the picture. This isn't just 2 men. There are 2 men of color, right? One is pulling the other one up. Okay, I made it up the mountain and now I'm going to help you. So, and it's all about role models, being able to see people, you know, succeeding in a field where you might have some curiosity. You know, I think people of a certain age, like I'm, you know, 52, and anybody who's around my age sort of, in a way, has this problem where there weren't many role models. One of my role models was Leslie Ann Jones. I thought it was really cool to see Leslie Ann Jones at Skywalker Sound in my 1989 Mix magazine. You know, it was a little thing just to see one woman in a studio like that, but the fact that it impacted me to the point where I can tell you about it 30 years later or so, apparently that was important. And I didn't need any other role models. I just needed one to sort of say, oh, it's not, just dudes out there. And then social capital. What is social capital? It's somebody who can vouch for you, having a degree. That's social capital. And these are the ingredients to join a movement. And this is a great book, by the way, by Pam Laird, who was my mentor, speaking of mentors. But she also talks about the fact that it's not just audio. Look at any professional industry. There's the American women in medicine. There's women in automotive design. There's women in architecture. There's a reason why a lot of these established industries have the woman's version of, or the Black version of. And it's because we need to build these 4 things. We need mentoring, networking, role models, and social capital. So it shouldn't be a surprise that the audio industry is also part of this. And I am still talking about immersive audio because it's one of all, even more so than STEM, even more so than music recording, I would say immersive audio has this problem. So we're heading, I think in 5-10 minutes, we'll take a break. So thanks for hanging in there with me, everybody. But I just wanted to tell you about some hidden figures. And here is Elizabeth Lucken. And she's from France, and Pascal Chedeville, also from France. And they started a movie format called LC Concept. L for Lucken and C for Chedeville, LC Concept Systems. And you can see a picture of it right there. They're holding some film. And then there's this black box with 2 CD trays in it. So in 1991-2, this was revolutionary, because until this point, everybody had been playing the sound from the film itself, which didn't sound great. And so they thought, hey, we've got CD quality here. Why don't we just slave a CD player to the film? And they did it. And some of the movies that used it, 1991, 2, 3, Cyrano de Bergerac, Basic Instinct, because Michelle Pfeiffer is in there, if you happen to remember any of these people. These are not minor movies. These are huge movies. But then something happened, something very nasty. DTS, and you remember from 18 slides ago that I had DTSX up there. They have a very huge market share, right? But they kind of infringed on their patent. And it was so bad. How bad was it, Leslie? I'll tell you. When Jurassic Park premiered in France in the 90s, they had police officers in the projection booth so that they couldn't play the DTS soundtrack. It was that bad. So can you imagine, you go to see the movie and the cops are there because they're like, we don't want you to hear the DTS sound. You have to play LC Concept. It was deep. Ultimately, and I share this story in my book, it was heart-wrenching. Elizabeth Lucken left her kids in France alone. Alone with no supervision. Her kids were like 14 and 9, I think. Not even her grandparent. The kids were on their own for 3 months while she was in court fighting for her patent. They finally settled out of court. But it's heartbreaking. The second heartbreaking thing is Pascal Chedeville got an Oscar for his innovation on the system. Elizabeth did not get an Oscar. Is this crazy? Do you see what I mean? Immersive and inclusive. I'm going to talk about somebody who wasn't slighted. Beyonce is killing it. She makes all the money. She makes all the music. She gets all the Grammys. But here's what you didn't know, that she produced the best surround album in 2014. Nobody, I guarantee nobody on this Zoom call today knew that Beyonce was a surround sound album producer. And now you know, she's one of the hidden figures. Here's another hidden figure. Rosen Nickel was one of 2 out of 42 AES Heiser lectures, and she specializes at spatial audio in Orange Labs in France, and she does stuff wavefield synthesis. I'd love to talk to her one day. So she's a hidden figure. 42 Heiser lectures, only 2 have been women. The other one was Leslie Ann Jones, my personal role model. Here's a group, 2 women, woman and Hayden actually identifies as non-binary, non-gender conforming. And so they're based in Los Angeles and they're all immersive audio. And so it's, there's another duo working in immersive audio, Anna Monti, and her partner own Delta Sound Lab. So there's, you know, if you're in a network, you can find these things. You know, if you're out of the network, you're not going to see women, non-gender conforming, Black people working in immersive audio unless you really look for them. I love talking about Kai XR. Now here's a little boy with a headset. Now it's briefly just to say it doesn't look spectacular to know that this, I'm sorry, this is not a little boy, this little girl. It doesn't seem spectacular that this child is exploring a virtual world until you consider the fact that the reason why this child is using this Kai XR headset is because their school district couldn't afford to take them to a museum. The school district in which they study is so poor, they cannot get 30 kids on a bus to take them to a museum. So a Black woman in Los Angeles came up with Kai XR, which is a platform where kids can go, click on an experience through a web browser, you know, put the cardboard, you know, the cardboard head virtual reality phone, sorry, they can experience this using a cardboard cutout thing and go to the museum. It's a really cool experience, but it was created by somebody who saw a deficit in accessibility. And then one of my favorite sites, Afrotectopia. What you see is a Black woman in the upper left-hand corner with a VR headset, and that's a symbol of Black people being in the virtual space, and their mission is to exist at the intersection of art, technology, and activism. So that's pretty cool. So definitely check out afrotectopia.org. And being conscious of the time, of course, there are institutions like the Recording Academy that are getting better. The new members of the Recording Academy in 2020, 3% did not disclose, but that's pretty close to parity, I would say, 48%. And this is because of the Annenberg study that I showed you earlier. That is the very study that drove the change to happen in the Recording Academy, where we have more people voting for Grammys who are more diverse. And then, of course, you guys know about Liz's work. And so that's just a quick summary of all of the feminist sound collectives that she was able to find. She started with 50, and now she's found over 70 organizations in the UK and worldwide. There's some in Canada, Germany, in Africa, in the United States, of course. And we're just so proud of what Liz has done. So again, it is such an intense need. So here's what I'd like to do. Before we take a break, I'll just talk about some of the things that I think are crucial. Actually, I think maybe we'll take a break now, since I think we hit that 40-minute mark. And when we come back, we can continue talking about some of these ingredients to getting in immersive sound. So if that's all right, Emily, I'll hand it to you, and maybe you can describe how we'll make our way through the break.
Yeah, absolutely fine. That's so interesting so far. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions so far on what Leslie said, feel free to write it in the chat, and then we'll do a Q&A later. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is refreshed.
Thanks, everybody. Likewise, I hope you were able to stretch a little bit.
Very important to stretch. Number one. Important in the Zoom comfort breaks, not to check your emails.
Right.
I bet some people have been checking their emails.
I just got a text from my husband that the dog needs food, so I know what I'm doing after this conference.
Right. So do you want to go into some questions, Leslie, or have you got more slides to show now?
Yeah, let's do. I know there's some questions that have come up. Some are related to a slide that I'm going to show about physical attributes and how everything's kind of skewed towards the male.
The male head. Yeah, I wasn't surprised to read that.
Is there anybody, who wants to come in with another question before I touch on that?
Maybe not now, Leslie, but I am interested in, like, if you've got headphones on, how actually do you make a sound through the algorithms or the way that you're manipulating the frequencies, or however it's done? How do you make a sound like it's either above you or below you or in front of you or behind you?
All right, let's do it. I'm ready to talk about that. I got some pictures, diagrams, and explanations. Hopefully that'll become clear. Yeah, so shall we resume?
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah.
Let me find my mouse and make sure my keynote is not hiding. All right, and just a thumbs up, everybody. So I wanted to continue just talking about some of the ways that we get this immersive thing happening for underrepresented groups. And that's we need safe spaces away from the microaggressions and the male gaze, as it's called. We need it to be affordable. And then we need a curriculum that goes from binaural to 22.2. Not everybody has access to 24 speakers. We need to understand that immersive audio can happen in radio dramas, film and television, music, and sound art is when I left off. We need to have some audio theory supporting all of this. So we'll talk a little bit about acoustics today. And of course, we need to get our hands on and we need to play. We need to play with these tools. And so hopefully I will give you some resources so that you can start to play. These are some of the books and links that I use to support the slides that we just saw. So if you want to screenshot this or watch the recording later and pause, or if you want to email me, I can just send them to you as a text link. All right, I can send them to Emily. So let's talk about psychoacoustics for a minute because they're important. And it's important to understand how we hear. And this is a phenomenon known as the phantom center. If you listen to, whether you're listening to headphones or speakers, there's an illusion that happens that a sound is coming right in front of you. And it has to do with what's called interaural time and level differences. The time that if the time of those two sounds on your left and right gets to both ears at the same time, you get the illusion that's coming from that this thing is coming from the center. And I just pulled this off the net. Sorry, #plagiarism, but I didn't really read what they're talking about crosstalk. I think they're just talking about how wide or narrow the image is. So if you have really discrete loudspeakers, you'll get a really discrete center image. And if your loudspeakers are more diffuse, the center image sort of widens out. But here's a thing. Look at this thing. That's a crazy thing. This describes something known as the butterfly effect. So if you look at this thing and you can imagine that's a butterfly, it's a messed up butterfly though. That butterfly needs to diet and really exercise. But this little butterfly, right, is the picture of what happens if you have 4 speakers. Okay, so there's a speaker left front, left back, and right back. So what we see in this create, I think it's more like a clover or a lily or something. It's not really a butterfly, but you see this this note at the top of the sphere that says VH, and that is the phantom image. It's a really good image. You get the sense of something coming behind, right in front of you, directly between the two speakers. As you move in either direction around the sphere, what you see is you don't have very good phantom image on the side. That's because you only have one ear on the side, you know. Most people I know only have one ear on each side of their head. And so if there is a sound coming, if you put equal energy in the right front and the right back speaker, you will not have a sense that something's coming from beside you. Mostly you have a sense that something's coming a little bit on the outside of that right front speaker. And if you imagine yourself panning a sound between the right front and right back, it's all messed up. Like you don't have a smooth transition between those two speakers. And so this is known as the butterfly effect. And similarly behind you, if you have equal energy coming from right and left back, you get a pretty good rear image behind you. It's not the best, but according to this study, it mirrors what's happening in the front. In my experience, in my research, that's not necessarily the case. So here's this picture again with a phantom center. But if you look at the picture on the left, you have 3-channel stereo. So you have a left speaker, a center speaker, and a right speaker. And if you can have 3 speakers in front of you, you get a very precise center image because there's a speaker there. There's a loudspeaker in front of you. That's where the sound is coming from. And you don't have to rely on psychoacoustics to get the phantom center. It's there. This is the best quote. It's never been published. It came to me from this guy named Arnaud, who works for a company called Trinov. And we were trying to figure out how to get Ambisonics working and work with sweet spots and phantom images. And he said, if you want it to appear as if a sound is coming from a location, put a speaker there. That's the best way to get it done. And so what we've done is we moved to this image of 5.1. So you have 3 speakers in front of you, a rear speaker and on the left and a rear speaker on the right. So my question to you, dear viewers, is based on the previous statement, and the previous statement is if you want it to appear as if a sound is coming from a particular location, put a speaker there. Based on that, what issues do you see with this 5.1 layout? And I turn it to you, the group. You can chat or you can open your mic. Go ahead. Let's see, who's this? I don't see your name. I just see somebody with a hand up with glasses like me.
So this is just a guess, but it's what I saw with something that I kind of thought I've been thinking about. The subwoofer's quite far away from the person who's listening, and you tend to feel the bass coming up through the floor, so you might feel that more. So I was wondering if that would need to be maybe closer to you because of it.
And that's a good point. So what happens with the subwoofer, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that subwoofer is going to transfer its energy to the floor and to your neighbors below you, unfortunately. And it's going to get to you. Those wavelengths are really long. If you remember sound, let's see, the speed of sound equals the wavelength times the frequency. So if you have, if C is constant and you have a really low frequency, it means you have a really long wavelength. So that's actually okay to have the subwoofer there. What we find is that there's a problem with the room you're in. So you could be sitting in a dead spot, and that subwoofer, the wavelength of that subwoofer, if you can see my hands, when it gets to that null, you could be sitting in a null and really not feel like there's a lot of energy coming from that subwoofer. And you can turn it up all day and you won't really get anything at, say, 80 hertz or whatever the size of your room is, because you're sitting in the dead spot. So a lot of times what's recommended is you do have to move that subwoofer, try the corner, try a foot away from the wall, try to the side of you, just to try and get your room so that you're not sitting in a dead spot. And that has to do, again, with the wavelength of those lower frequencies. So well spotted. Anybody else want to gander at what some problems might be with this speaker layout?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Also, this is awesome. I think
Thank you.
this is, I feel like there's going to be an issue with phase. I feel like there's quite you're going to get signals canceling each other out because they're quite close, kind of what you were saying before about the bass and kind of bass frequencies. So yeah, I just, particularly with the front three, I feel like there's going to be an issue with phase there personally.
Right. And so what we have to do is use, this is a recommendation is like, make sure that your speakers are an equilateral triangle. And so the phase that you're working with here has to do with the signal that you're sending to the speakers. But there is a danger that if you're sending something to all speakers at the same time, they will cancel each other out. So you have to be really careful that each speaker sort of has something discrete that it's playing. You know, if you try to do like, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Ultron, Age of Ultron. Was it the Avengers? And they had James Spader, who played Ultron, was above the earth and he levitated this massive piece of earth that he was going to throw down and create a crater and a nuclear explosion that would wipe out humanity. What happened was they put his voice in all the speakers. That's very rare. Usually in a movie, they put the voice in the center speaker. So depending on where you saw Age of Ultron, if you saw it at home, you might have some really weird things going on when Ultron goes, I will wipe out humanity, or and then, you know, you might get this effect. So these are amazing. Yeah, talking about phase, talking about where the subwoofer is located. As a matter of fact, if you buy a 5.1 system, whether it's by Genelec or whoever, they actually have a phase button on the subwoofer. They have a phase button so you can invert the phase. Even my little, who made this thing? Cambridge Audio, my Cambridge Audio loudspeaker that I use for a subwoofer has a phase button on it so that you can compensate for the fact that your speakers are every which way in your room. But there's another one that I'm going to show you, and that is, no, not that one yet. This sort of, if you want it to appear as if a sound is coming from a location, put it there. If we go back to our quad example and we look between left front and right front, we see this inability to have a good phantom image. And that's sort of here too. Like these, the left and rear speaker, left and left rear speaker are spaced so far apart. If you're watching, let me pick up another movie, Ford versus Ferrari. There's a scene in Ford versus Ferrari where the car is spinning around the track and then whipping around the room. They're actually, you know, panning in a circle. And so if that car is going, it's going from left to right rear, it's not really going to sound smooth when it goes in that circle because you have, you know, the inability to discriminate sounds that are coming from the side. So let's put more speakers. So this is 7.1.4. We need more speakers because we need some really discrete localization. We want to hear Lord of the Rings when the elf dude played by Orlando Bloom, I don't even know his character's name, and he shoots his arrow and it comes from the right front to the left rear, and you want it to go, you know, past your eyes, and you need lots of loudspeakers. Legolas, thank you very much. I should remember Legolas. So Legolas is firing arrows off at the bad guys. I don't know who they fought in Lord of the Rings. I was just, I'm really bad at that kind of thing. Anyway, so we need to put speakers there. And so that's why we have so many loudspeakers. Yeah, I can nerd out. I don't know the names. I'm more of a Marvel universe kind of gal. Anyway, who has room for all those loudspeakers? Now I'm sitting to you in this, you know, this room I'm leasing, you know, as part of my business. And I did have at my house, which is, I don't know, what's the distance? It's probably 3/4 of the size from the back wall to the front wall in here. And, you know, dear family, we're going to have surround sound. I hope you enjoy it. So I had my center, I had my left and right, I had my back left and right, but I can't really put the side left and right because we've got a dog and 2 children and it will get knocked over. So that's just not going to happen. So I don't have room for all the speakers. So I have to live with 5.1, as I'm sure most people do. If that, usually people have the sound bar, right? So then we go to so now we're going to get to Joe's question about psychoacoustics and how we can compensate for having to have so many speakers. Can we do all this just using headphones? Well, that's a good question. So here I am again talking to Fritz, the Neumann binaural dummy head. And this microphone is used to try and get the illusion of 360-degree space. So if you look at our fellow over here, he looks very different from me. I'm sure you've noticed that the frequency response. So those green, red, and blue lines show the frequency response going to dude's ear. Okay. From different elevations. So green, if a sound is coming from above, the frequency response dips at whatever it is at 8 to 10K and then comes back up. If there's a sound coming from the red point source, then you get this other picture, which is, you know, everything's dipping and then there's this huge massive dip at 10 kilohertz and then a great big boost in the upper frequencies. And then if something's coming below you, you get a totally different response curve again. So that's that guy's head-related transfer function. Okay, so HRTF stands for head-related transfer function. But here, look at all those ears. There are no 2 ears that are exactly the same. So if you get this guy's head-related transfer function, you're not going to get the same results if you use all these different kinds of ears. I don't see mine on here. It's so funny, like mine's not on there. I don't know who these ears belong to, but none of them are mine. And I've had a lousy time experiencing binaural audio. Absolutely lousy. But hey, this is a really cool thing. There are 2, and I apologize to the manufacturers of Immerse and Audis. I've sort of borrowed both images, but apparently you can get a personalized HRTF by taking a picture of your ear and having artificial intelligence make your HRTFs. That's freaking awesome. I want it. I don't have it, but I want it. My birthday's coming up. Who knows? I could use that. And this is, again, something that, and at least in the case of Immerse, you can get in Cubase or Nuendo. So that hopefully answers the question of how you simulate all these 360-degree experiences. There are also databases that you can download that you can try out different HRTFs. So if you don't have those tools, you can actually download a database and like choose some until you find one that works. The other thing that I've heard is important to do, let's see, do I have a picture? No, the other thing I heard is important to do is, oh, you can just see in here, I'll just stop this for a second. I'm probably gonna have to go back and remember all the settings I made in my keynote, but you see these headphones clasp to my ear, they're not open back, they're sealed. So when I listen to sound coming in my headphones, the reason it doesn't sound like it's coming outside of me is because I have headphones on. I feel, you know, I don't, you know, I have headphones on and I know I have headphones on, and any little electronic signal that goes from here into my ear canal, I just know it's coming from my headphones because that's what I'm wearing. But some people say that if you get open back headphones and you can hear what's going on around you, like cars outside, traffic, the rumble of people upstairs or in the next room, it sort of takes away that sense of, you know, claustrophobic, I'm not part of the world right now. So that's just something I'm not really able to capture that in a slide. what's going to happen if, oh, see, it didn't
Yep,
revert to
that
the other
worked.
thing.
Well
That's
done.
crazy. Like,
success.
I need to have a word with the keynote people. So again, there are ways around it. And then just sort of keeping on that line. So this is the same but different. It's this thing called Ambisonics. And I love this groovy little picture. What does it mean? It looks like something, like a model, like you can physically like grab one of those things and like play with it and fiddle with it. But they're actually polar patterns visualized in 3D. So on the top picture, and I'm sorry to switch gears on you so fast. So basically with Ambisonics, we're talking about another way to capture sound and playback sound. Sorry about that. I need a better transition slide. So at the top of this ambisonic slide, you have a sphere, and that is meant to replicate a omnidirectional source. And then on the next level, this is called first order ambisonics, and you've got some globes that are kind of glommed together. And those are supposed to replicate what you might think of as a figure of 8 microphone. So if you have a figure of 8 microphone and you put it kind of diagonal to the left, you get the hot side of the mic in the front and the negative side of the mic in the back. And then if you take your mic and turn it this way, the hot side's on top and the null's in the back. And then if you aim it to your right, the hot side's in front, the null's in the back. So that's first order ambisonics. And so what's happening is, if you have a particular kind of mic, like one of these, a sound field, let's concentrate on the sound field because that's a first order mic. So the sound field is on the left and it has 1, 2, 3, 4 capsules. And those 4 capsules are recording sound and messing with them mathematically in order to create that first line with the 3 figure of 8 patterns. And with this mic, they say that you can get 360-degree sphere of sound. Well, the only problem is that it only works if you're sitting in a very particular sweet spot, or maybe even wearing headphones. If somebody sitting next to you hears the same signal, they don't get really the same effect. But as we go up in orders, and as we add more capsules around the mic, with the Eigen mic, I think has 25, and the Zilia has even more. I can't remember how many microphone capsules are on each one of those balls. You get up into these higher orders. So now you've got a double figure of 8 thing. And each order of ambisonics, as you go up to 5th order, some are, you are able to localize sounds from in front of you, from up and to the right, from down and behind to the left, from this whole 360-degree sphere. So these mics are really cool, and they're catching on. And a lot of game engines are using these too. And you can even get plugins. So let's talk about how you can try this stuff yourself. So if you have recorded something, and there are also places where you can download ambisonic sound files to play with, then you can get some of these tools to play with. So for example, here's the Facebook 360 plugin. And so you can play with the azimuth and the elevation, so the tilt and the height of the microphone, how far things are around and how diffuse. There's also the Dolby Atmos production suite. Now, I would agree that this isn't an ambisonic tool, but you can actually record something in ambisonics, use Pro Tools to unpack it, and play it in an Atmos system, which is pretty off the chain cool. And let's come back to this in a second, actually. And here's another one where Wise, which is a game audio engine, is actually able to play ambisonic files, and you can change the focus of this ambisonic sound source, which I just like looking at the cool colors. I've never played with Wise myself. But just going back to Dolby Atmos production suite just for a second, if you have Pro Tools, if you have access to Pro Tools, you can download a demo of Dolby Atmos production suite, and you can play with this thing. And they have tutorials and webinars, and I've been getting into those, and it's really fun. But in this example, they're using objects that they're panning around. And the way they describe it is really clever. They're like, if you're in a forest, like I showed you that picture of the forest, the things that don't move are your speakers, you know, the trees and the leaves and the river, or, you know, the moss on the ground, they don't move. So those are your speakers. But there are things within the forest that do move, which are birds and squirrels. And those are kind of like objects that you can move around in this 360-degree space. And so they're using, at the very core of it, and I'm sure nobody can confirm this because it's part of Dolby's secret sauce, but at the core of it, I believe they're using ambisonic technology. So really cool. Again, you can download a demo to play with. And if you're in the market to go the next step and buy it, it's like 250 pounds. So not inexpensive, but not as expensive as some other things that are out there.
That's great that it's becoming more affordable now, especially because you're saying at the beginning about the barriers to getting into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just come to my last slide, which is another free plugin you can try, which is the Ambient Orbit. So Joe had asked about how can you make it sound like something's spinning around. Try this plugin called the Ambient Orbit and see if you can get it to replicate. That's it. I know you guys have some questions and answers for me, so I'll go ahead and bring this to close. And
amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, cool. So Kat, Scott, did Leslie answer the question, or did you have anything more to ask? I'm sure this would be really interesting for you, especially.
Yeah, I think for me, like, it was probably more the microphones, because I've never done anything with like Ambisonics or like the binaural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that people have got them and I can like borrow them, but I just don't know what it is that I need in a way for trying to make that. So I don't know if you have any tips.
Well, actually, it's if you can get your hands on a binaural mic, that's fantastic, because you can, is it one of the ones that's on a pole, or is it the ones that you stick in your ears? Do you know?
I'm not sure actually. I've not actually seen it, but I know there's some like organizations that are like that have got them, and yeah, I can borrow them if I need. So.
Yeah, so I mean, you can you know, take your rig into nature and have a seat and record some lovely binaural sound and come and play back on your speakers. But the thing you have to remember is, if you're creating an immersive soundscape, it's not going to sound right if you don't have headphones on. So if you record binaural sound and you play it over speakers, you'll just, I don't know, it sounds like stereo. It's not until you get the drivers right next to your ears that you're like, oh crap, it sounds like I'm there again, you know, or I'm in this new place. And then just in terms of, I think your question was creating soundscapes. Yeah, I mean, when I hear soundscape, I sort of think of the bed, you know, upon which everything, you know, we talked about the forest and everything. So if you're going to create a drama with people talking, you could use binaural microphones as the bed for that, and then the people, you know, in there could be, you know, dead center, unless, you know, you had this radio drama and everybody talked around the binaural mic. I'm sure that's been done. And another thing about immersive soundscapes, yes, is you know, you can get 5 mics. You know, you can have a left mic, center mic, right mic, left rear and right rear mic that are pointing back, and then you can, you know, record it that way, and that is more applicable to playback in 5.1. If it depends on, yeah, just have in mind who's listening and how will they be listening. Are they listening on headphones or speakers? And that sort of will drive your decisions on how to make that.
Oh yeah, and I just wondered, like, because at the moment I'm working with lots of like samples that I've got already, and I'm trying to see if I can use those samples to create like a kind of bubble world, like literally a 360-degree sound experience. I don't know if you can do that with just existing samples that haven't been recorded with like these types of microphones.
Some people say you can. I mean, with Facebook 360 and with those, you know, and the Ambient Orbit, they claim to be able to pan stuff all around, but everybody's going to have a different experience, you know? So if you mix it for yourself and you're like, oh, I finally got that sound to sound like it's coming from here, you know, it's probably, I'm not sure that the next person that listens to it's going to have that same experience, but I think people are trying to get there. But I think a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to make this thing and it's going to be here and people are going to be walking around and it's going to be awesome. And it sort of just sounds like stereo, you know, but hopefully the tools will keep getting better. But that's not to say you shouldn't play with it. You should definitely play with it and get your hands on it, because I think the technology is only going to get better. And like being able to take a picture of your ear and create your own HRTFs, that's kind of cool.
Cool, thank you.
Welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Leslie? Feel free to turn the mic or write it in the chat.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, my name is LaFracy. I'm in New York City. How you doing?
Hey, good. How you doing?
Good. I'm a composer, and I work with electronic music and music technology, and I have a new program that's an offshoot from the Willie Mae Rock Camp for Girls, named after Big Mama Thornton, called Willie Mae Future Sounds.
Oh, cool.
So it's for Black and Brown girls and gender expansive youth, right at the age range where your slide showed the drop off.
Right.
So I was really happy to see that data, and I'd like to get that slide later, or this information. I work in quad and with my electronic music, and I teach spatial composition within quad. And so we're setting up our 1,500 square foot listening lab as sort of an immersive sound studio.
Cool.
I was gonna just start in quad because it seemed to me that, you know, going from 0 to galaxy, you know, might be, you know, a Meyer galaxy might be a big jump. I'm curious, so I'm going to get to the question here. I would love to connect offline though, because I have so many questions. However, and thank you, you're very inspiring. And
thank you.
But with this whole quark, making the quark being free, and now making it possible to do quadraphonic and have it be, you know, the algorithms make it so that you can stream it on Spotify and YouTube. Do you see, because it seems like the technology is always like bigger, more speakers, more speakers, more speakers. Like, do you see a resurgence of quad potentially? And is there room for that?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing installations, you know, definitely there's no reason not to use quad. I think that other DAWs might be easier to work with than Pro Tools because they're set up for, they don't do quad there. It's like either stereo, 5.1, etc. They might have quad panners. I don't quote me on that, but you might want to even try Reaper, or one of the other things where you can customize how, you know, how your setup is going to be, where there's no front, you know, because I know in Pro Tools it's like this is front, center is front, but for you it might be like, no, I just want stuff, you know, and I don't want, you know, if somebody's walking in the middle of this quadraphonic experience, there is no front. So that's just another consideration. But yeah, let's connect offline. Feel free. Anybody. Yeah, I'm totally accessible.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting. And I'm sure, yeah, there we go. Let's just put it in the chat if anyone has any more questions.
Yes. Thank you. And then I saw the thing about the Soundscape for multi-channel speakers. You don't have to have something for each speaker. It's like that, the forest thing I talked about, where the forest could be a 5.1 bed. So let's follow up offline if you want to know more.
Cool. Any final comments? Comments, anyone, before we finish? Yeah, Nicole?
I'm so glad that there is another Black woman smashing it in this field, because I had no idea upon seeing, like, legit, I had no idea, which is frustrating as hell, that I didn't know. And then to come across this session and seeing your beautiful face, Leslie, I was like, right, I'm signing up immediately, because oh my God. And like hearing about your achievements and your career thus far has just like, I was writing furiously. That's why my camera was off most of the time, because I was like, I need to keep up with this because this is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to connect with you. Like, oh man, you're gonna get quite an annoying email from me very shortly.
Well, the one thing I can tell you is we're not the only ones. I know of several Black women in this field who are killing it. So yeah, let's get in touch.
Let's do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great. And that's what this is all about, is connecting and having role models and mentors. And yeah, going back to the slide you shared right at the beginning, Leslie. So that's really great to hear that everyone's enjoyed it so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. I wish we had more time, but like I said, just feel free to drop me a line anytime. Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful week and take care, everybody.
Thanks.